It was a moment that little people, big world fans have been waiting for, a scene straight out of a romance novel. Amy Roloff, newly single and navigating the treacherous waters of dating after a decades-long marriage, attends a pool party in singles mixer. There, across the crowded room, is Chris Marek. He's handsome, charming, and confident. He approaches her, they talk, they laugh. It looked like fate. A perfect, organic meet-cute that promised a second chance at love for the beloved matriarch of the Roloff family. But what if it wasn't fate? What if it was something far more sinister? What if that chance encounter wasn't a chance at all, but a carefully staged ambush at the end of a 5-year hunt? We have uncovered a story so shocking it threatens to shatter the entire foundation of their relationship. The fairy tale, we've been told, was a meticulously planned heist from the very beginning. What we are about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about Amy Roloff and Chris Marek. The information our sources have provided is explosive, and it paints a picture not of a loving husband, but of a calculated predator. To make sure you don't miss a single update in this developing story, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell. You are not going to want to miss a single second of this exclusive investigation. Trust me, to understand the sheer audacity of the plot we've uncovered, we have to go back in time. Back to the raw, painful days of Amy Roloff's divorce from Matt. For over 27 years, they were a unit, a brand, the central pillars of a reality television empire built on the very foundation of their family life. When that pillar crumbled, it left Amy in a state of profound vulnerability. She wasn't just losing a husband, she was losing her identity as she knew it. She was facing a future alone for the first time in her adult life, a future filled with uncertainty and emotional turmoil. This was a woman whose entire life had been documented for public consumption, her heartbreaks and triumphs broadcast to millions. Her defenses were down, her need for validation, for a partner who saw her for her, was at an all-time high. She was, by any psychological measure, the perfect target, but it wasn't just her emotional state that made her a target, it was her financial one. The divorce from Matt Roloff wasn't just messy emotionally, it was a complex division of a multi-million-dollar empire. The centerpiece of that empire was, of course, Roloff Farms. After years of tense negotiations and public back and forth, Amy made the difficult decision to sell her half of the farm to Matt. The buyout figures that were reported were substantial, instantly making Amy Roloff a very wealthy, single woman. Her net worth, a combination of the farm sale, her reality TV salary, her book deals, and her cooking brand, suddenly skyrocketed. She wasn't just Amy, the TV mom. She was Amy Roloff, a multimillionaire, liquid and unattached. And in the world of high-stakes opportunists, that kind of money paints a giant flashing target on your back. It rings a dinner bell for a very specific kind of predator, one who specializes not in crude scams over email, but in the long, patient, and devastatingly effective game of romance fraud. Our investigation has led us down a rabbit hole, connecting a series of whispers and reports that all point to a disturbing pattern. It's been suggested by multiple sources that Chris Marek is not just a simple real estate agent from Idaho. This, they claim, is a carefully cultivated cover story. The theory posits that Chris is what experts in the field call a romance artist, a professional who preys on wealthy, emotionally vulnerable women, often those emerging from a high-profile divorce. Think about it. What better profession for such a man than real estate? It grants him legitimate access to the financial pulse of a community. A real estate agent sees who is buying, who is selling, who is liquidating assets after a divorce. He has a built-in excuse to be charming, to build rapport, to ask probing questions about a person's life and finances under the guise of professional interest. He moves in circles where wealth is discussed openly, where opportunities are identified. It's the perfect camouflage, allowing the wolf to walk among the sheep, not only unnoticed, but welcomed. According to our sources, Chris's move to Oregon wasn't a random life change. It was a strategic relocation. He allegedly had a list, a portfolio of potential targets in the Pacific Northwest, a region known for its understated private wealth. And at the very top of that list, highlighted and annotated, was Amy Roloff. He didn't just stumble upon her. He is said to have studied her for years, long before he ever made his move. He allegedly watched the show, not as a fan, but as a researcher. He analyzed her personality, her conflicts with Matt, her relationships with her children. He learned her likes, her dislikes, her dreams, and most importantly, her weaknesses. The entire courtship from the very first meeting was not a process of getting to know her. It was the execution of a pre-planned strategy, a script he had been rehearsing for years. Every word, every gesture, every motorcycle ride into the sunset was, according to these explosive reports, a calculated move in a 5-year plot to secure the Roloff fortune. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like a wild conspiracy theory, a fantastical leap, and you would be right to be skeptical. We were too, until a source came forward, a woman who wishes to remain anonymous for her own safety, but whose story is so chillingly similar, so detailed in its parallels, that it's impossible to ignore. We will call her Elizabeth. Elizabeth is a successful business owner from a city not far from Portland. Several years before Chris ever met Amy, Elizabeth was a recent divorcee herself, having just ended a 20-year marriage. She was successful, wealthy, and emotionally raw. And then she met Chris Marek. Elizabeth recounted her story to an intermediary working with our channel. Her voice, even when relayed secondhand, carried the weight of a deep and lasting betrayal. She said he was impossibly charming, a master at making a woman feel like the only person in the world. He swept her off her feet. There were the motorcycle rides, the same ones that would later become his signature move with Amy. He presented himself as a rugged, free-spirited man who was looking for a true partner to share adventures with. Elizabeth described his playbook, and it's a carbon copy of what viewers saw unfold on Little People, Big World. He mirrored her interests, validated her feelings about her ex-husband, and slowly, methodically, positioned himself as her protector, her confidant, the one person who truly understood her. But then, the subtle financial probing began. He'd make casual remarks about her business, her investments. He'd talk about the power of a couple working together financially, about consolidating assets to build a stronger future. He started pushing to have his name put on a small joint account just for travel expenses, he'd said. It was his way of testing the waters. Elizabeth, a shrewd businesswoman, felt a prickle of unease. She started to pull back to ask more questions. The moment she did, she says his demeanor changed. The charm became a thin veneer over a cold frustration. He grew distant, then angry, accusing her of not trusting him. The relationship imploded as quickly as it had begun. He vanished from her life, leaving her confused and heartbroken. It was only years later when she saw him on television, smiling next to Amy Roloff, using the same lines, the same motorcycle, the same romantic narrative, that the cold truth washed over her. She hadn't been a romantic partner to him. She had been an unsuccessful business venture, a target that got away. She believes, with every fiber of her being, that Amy was simply his next and most successful acquisition. Elizabeth's testimony is a bombshell, but it's her word against his. That's why the next piece of evidence our sources have provided is so critically important. It's the kind of tangible proof that turns a disturbing theory into a terrifying reality. We're talking about what has been described to us as Chris Marek's Hunter's Dossier. According to a source who claims to have helped Chris move out of an old apartment years ago, shortly before he became a permanent fixture in Amy's life, a forgotten folder was found tucked away in the back of a desk drawer. The source didn't think much of it at the time, but held on to it. Now, realizing its potential significance, they have come forward. Leaked photographs of the contents of this folder, which have been exclusively provided to our channel, are chilling. The images show a worn, beige manila folder. On the tab, a single letter is written in black marker, R, for Roloff. Inside, the contents lay out a predator's research. There are dozens of printed out articles from online tabloids and financial news sites, all detailing Amy Roloff's divorce. Sections about her emotional state and the farm buyout negotiations are highlighted in yellow. One article, speculating on her final net worth, has a number circled in red pen with a question mark next to it. But it gets even darker. The photos show several pages of what appears to be handwritten notes on a legal pad. These notes are a psychological breakdown of his target. One note, which we have seen a clear photograph of, allegedly reads, emotional vulnerabilities. A, feels unheard, overlooked after years with Matt. Responds well to direct validation and praise. B, fear of being alone post-divorce. Emphasize forever partnership. C, children are her main emotional support system. Position self as an independent support, not a replacement. Another note details conversation topics. Safe topics, cooking, grandchildren, travel. Avoid, farm politics, direct financial talk initially. It's a cold, analytical, and terrifyingly precise battle plan for capturing a human heart. And the dossier wasn't just physical. Our investigation delved into the digital world, and what we found adds another layer of premeditation to this alleged scheme. Sources skilled in digital forensics have pointed us toward a now deleted social media profile that was active in the months leading up to Chris and Amy's first meeting. The profile, under a generic name with no personal photos, was a member of over a dozen singles and social groups in the Portland area, including the very group that hosted the pool party where Chris and Amy famously met. The profile's activity shows a pattern of observation, not participation. It would view the guest list for upcoming events, study the profiles of the single women attending, but never post or interact. It was a ghost, a scout. The theory is that Chris used this burner profile to conduct digital reconnaissance. He identified the event Amy would be attending, studied the environment, and planned his chance encounter down to the last detail. He didn't just happen to be there. He allegedly knew she would be there, what she would be looking for, and exactly what to say when he made his approach. It was an ambush, planned with military precision. If the dossier and the digital trail weren't enough, a human source has come forward to corroborate the narrative of a calculated hunt. A man who describes himself as a former friend of Chris Marek reached out to us, claiming his conscience would no longer allow him to stay silent. He described Chris in the period before he met Amy as a man who was always looking for an angle. He said Chris would often talk about his dating life in terms of investments and returns. The friend recalled one specific phone call, a call that has haunted him ever since. He claims it happened just a day or two after Chris first met Amy at the pool party. According to this former friend, Chris was ecstatic, almost giddy. He allegedly said, and I quote, "I think I finally landed the big one. I hit the TV jackpot." The friend said he was laughing, but it wasn't a laugh of genuine happiness. It was, he described, the triumphant laugh of a man who had just closed the biggest deal of his life. At the time, the friend brushed it off as a crude joke. But as he watched Chris and Amy's relationship deepen, as he saw Chris seamlessly integrate himself into her life and her finances, a sickening realization began to dawn on him. It wasn't a joke, it was a mission statement. This brings us to the core of the alleged fraud, the part of the story where the long con begins to pay dividends. For years, everything seemed perfect on the surface. Chris was the supportive partner Amy had always craved. He encouraged her independence, stood by her side, and eventually they married in a beautiful ceremony right on the farm she once co-owned. It was the happy ending everyone wanted for Amy. But behind the scenes, a very different story was allegedly unfolding. The betrayal, when it was discovered, was not a single dramatic event, but a slow, creeping horror. According to our insider sources, the first thread that unraveled the entire tapestry of lies was a small, seemingly insignificant financial discrepancy. Amy, who has always been careful with her money, allegedly noticed a series of small, regular transfers from one of her personal accounts. They weren't large amounts, a few $100s here, 1,000 there, small enough to fly under the radar for a long time, but they were consistent, happening month after month. When she investigated, she traced them to a bank account she had never heard of, an account that was, to her shock and horror, in Chris Marek's name. It was a secret account, a hidden siphon. He had allegedly been bleeding small amounts of her money for years, a slow and steady drain into his own private coffers. The discovery was a body blow. It was inexplicable. Why would the man she loved, her husband, be secretly taking money from her? The question sent her on a desperate search for answers, a search through their shared life, their home, looking for anything that could explain this profound betrayal. That search, our sources claim, led her to his old desk, a piece of furniture they had moved from his bachelor apartment. Tucked away in a back panel she never knew existed, she found it. Not the complete dossier. He had apparently been smart enough to destroy the most incriminating parts, but the remnants. A few stray pages of notes, a printout of an old article about her net worth, creased and worn. It was enough. It was the key that unlocked the horrifying truth. In that moment, the entire world shifted on its axis. Every shared memory, every tender word, every loving gesture was instantly recontextualized. It wasn't real. The judgment fell upon her with the weight of a physical blow. Her entire relationship, the love story she had shared with the world, was a business transaction. She wasn't a partner. She was a mark. She wasn't a wife. She was an asset to be acquired and liquidated. The charming man she married, the rock she leaned on, was a carefully constructed character, a role he played to perfection. The real Chris Marek was the man who took notes on her emotional weaknesses, the man who celebrated landing the TV jackpot, the man who siphoned her money into a secret account. The love, the support, the marriage. It was all a calculated fraud, the final, successful act of a multi-year con. The man sleeping next to her in her bed was a stranger, a predator who had successfully infiltrated her life and her heart. The fairy tale was over, replaced by a cold, terrifying reality. The man she loved had never existed at all. The verdict Amy delivered to herself in the silent, dust-filled room where she found the evidence was swift and absolute. Trapped. She was trapped in a lie so vast and all-encompassing that it defied comprehension. Her home was not a sanctuary, it was a stage. Her husband was not a partner, he was a captor. And her marriage was not a union of love, it was a legal and financial prison, meticulously constructed by a master manipulator. The immediate aftermath wasn't loud or explosive. It was a terrifying, profound silence. A silence that settled over their house like a thick fog, where every creak of the floorboards, every tick of the clock seemed to mock her. How could she have been so blind? This question became a relentless tormentor, replaying every moment of their 5-year relationship in a new, horrifying light. His charming compliments were no longer sweet. They were calculated assessments. His supportive gestures were not acts of love. They were strategic investments. The entire relationship, every memory she cherished, had been poisoned, retroactively transformed into a scene from a crime. Divorce, the obvious solution, immediately presented itself not as an escape route, but as a gateway to an even greater hell. Amy Roloff is not a private citizen. Her life is a public commodity. A divorce from Chris Marek wouldn't be a quiet separation. It would be a media firestorm of catastrophic proportions. The headlines wrote themselves in her mind: Roloff, matriarch, duped by gold digger; Amy's fairy tale, romance exposed as a sham; how a con man fooled a reality TV star. The public humiliation would be unbearable. She, who had cultivated an image of a strong, resilient woman who had found happiness on her own terms, would be recast as a fool, a victim, a cautionary tale. Every tabloid, every gossip blog, every YouTube channel would pick apart her judgment, her vulnerability, her gullibility. The shame of it felt like a physical weight threatening to crush her. It would be a public stoning, and her heart was not strong enough to endure it. Beyond the public relations nightmare lay the financial one. A marriage is a contract, and Chris had been methodical. Our sources indicate there was a prenuptial agreement, but these documents can be challenged, especially in a long-term marriage. Chris, a man who allegedly researched her for years, would have undoubtedly studied marital law with the same fervor. He could argue that his contributions to her life and brand, his presence on the show, his support for her businesses, his role as the husband, entitled him to a significant portion of the wealth accumulated during their marriage. He could drag the proceedings out for years, burying her in legal fees, forcing her to bleed the very fortune he had set out to acquire. He would turn the legal system into his final weapon, using it to extract his pound of flesh. A divorce wouldn't be a clean break. It would be a prolonged and costly war of attrition, a war she might not have the stamina or the resources to win without devastating losses. And then there was the family, her children, her grandchildren. How could she ever explain this to them? How could she tell them that the man they had welcomed into their lives, the man who sat at their holiday tables and played with their children, was a fraud, that he had targeted their mother in her most vulnerable state? The revelation would not only shatter their perception of Chris, but could also sow seeds of doubt and recrimination. They might question her judgment, or worse, blame themselves for not seeing the signs. It would be another trauma to inflict upon a family that had already endured the public spectacle of one painful divorce. The cost was simply too high. Protecting her children from this monstrous truth became her paramount and most agonizing priority. And so the verdict stood. She was trapped. Trapped by the law, trapped by her fame, and trapped by her love for her family. Escaping the prison would mean burning down the entire kingdom, and she wasn't sure if that was a price she was willing to pay. This is the context for the current state of their relationship, what our insiders describe as the silent war. To the outside world, to the ever-present cameras of Little People, Big World, they are still Amy and Chris. They smile for selfies. They hold hands at public events. They film scenes in their kitchen talking about their plans for the future. It is a masterful performance, a testament to Amy's strength and Chris's audacious, unblinking deceit. But when the cameras turn off, when the crew leaves and the front door locks, the curtain falls. The smiles vanish. The warmth evaporates, replaced by an Arctic chill. The home becomes a Cold War battlefield, a tense and silent space occupied by two enemies who know each other's secrets. Our sources paint a chilling picture of life inside their home. They describe a relationship that now exists only in gestures and necessities. There are no more deep conversations, no shared laughter, no spontaneous affection. They are roommates bound by a terrible secret. They communicate through clipped sentences about household logistics, bills, appointments, filming schedules. More often than not, they communicate through lawyers. The real conversations, the ones about assets and exit strategies, are happening in sterile offices between high-priced attorneys. Amy knows the truth, and Chris knows that she knows. This shared knowledge hangs between them, a tangible and suffocating presence. Every glance is loaded. Every word is a potential landmine. He watches her, gauging her resolve, looking for cracks in her armor. She watches him, the man she once loved, and sees only a predator, a monster wearing a familiar face, wondering what his next move will be. In this silent war, Chris Marek holds a powerful weapon, the threat of mutual destruction. According to our sources, his position is one of brazen denial and insidious gaslighting. When confronted, he allegedly feigned shock and outrage, turning the tables on Amy. He has reportedly claimed the secret bank account was a surprise fund for a future anniversary gift. He has dismissed the Dossier remnants as old, meaningless scribbles from his real estate days, brainstorming notes about potential clients that she is twisting into something sinister. He is trying to make her feel like the crazy one, the paranoid one, the one who is destroying their marriage with baseless accusations. It is a classic abuser's tactic designed to destabilize the victim and make them doubt their own reality. He knows she has no smoking gun that would be definitive in a court of law, no videotape confession, no signed contract outlining his plot. He knows that in the court of public opinion, he can paint himself as the wronged husband, a man whose wife has suddenly and inexplicably turned on him. Behind the scenes, the legal battle has already begun, a vicious and silent conflict fought through legal letters and threatening phone calls between their representatives. A report suggests that Chris, through his attorney, has made his demands clear. He wants a quiet, amicable divorce, one where they release a joint statement about growing apart. In exchange for his silence, for not dragging her name and the entire Roloff family through the mud with his own twisted version of events, he is demanding a staggering financial settlement. A golden parachute. He is, in effect, holding her reputation and her family's peace for ransom. It is the final, desperate move of a con man who has been caught. He can no longer drain her assets slowly. He is now attempting one last massive heist before he disappears. Amy's legal team is fighting back, of course. They are in the painstaking process of trying to build a case for fraud, a legal standard that is notoriously difficult to prove in the context of a marriage. They are quietly interviewing people from Chris's past, trying to find other Elizabeths who are willing to come forward and establish a pattern of behavior. They are combing through every financial record, every email, every text message, looking for the piece of evidence that will expose the entire con. It is a high-stakes chess match where every move is calculated, and the board is the rest of Amy Roloff's life. The facade of their happy marriage is no longer a matter of personal pride. It is a strategic necessity. It is the one piece of leverage she has left, the one thing he still needs from her to maintain his own cover. As long as they appear happy, his position is weaker. The moment she files for divorce, the war goes public, and he can deploy his scorched earth tactics. So, this is the impossible precipice on which Amy Roloff now stands. She is facing a choice that no person should ever have to make. On one hand, she can continue to live the lie. She can maintain the silent war, protecting her public image, shielding her family from the ugly truth, and perhaps negotiating a less catastrophic financial exit behind the scenes. She can survive, but she will never be free. She will continue to share her home and her life with the man who systematically dismantled her heart for profit. The price of peace would be her own soul. On the other hand, she can fight. She can risk everything to expose him for what he truly is. She can file for a divorce on the grounds of fraud, ignite the media firestorm, and endure the public humiliation and the brutal legal battle that would follow. She would be calling out the monster not just for herself, but for every woman he might target in the future. It would be an act of incredible bravery, but the cost could be everything she has spent her life building: her fortune, her reputation, and her family's tranquility. Is Amy Roloff trapped forever in a gilded cage of her own fame? Or should she risk it all, burn it all down, to reclaim her life and get justice? The battle lines are drawn, the stakes have never been higher, and the whole world is watching, even if they don't know the real story yet. We have brought you the exclusive reports from our insiders. Now, we want to know what you think. What should Amy do? Should she fight or should she fold? Tell us what she should do in the comments below. We'll be reading every single one.